Roman Empire was powerful, but what you don't know is how they hacked the battlefield. Rome didn't just win wars, they manipulated them, turned chaos into calculation, and enemies into test subjects. Their soldiers were relentless, their formations untouchable. But the real secret? They fought with tricks, weapons of deception, timing, and psychological terror that no other army dared attempt. These aren't myths. These are the insane battle strategies that made the Roman legions unstoppable for over 500 years. Chapter 1. The Ghost Formation Trick, Disappearing in Plain Sight. It starts with silence. A Roman cohort, 400 men, walks onto the battlefield. Shields locked, helmets gleaming, absolutely still. The enemy braces. But then, the front line splits apart, and the soldiers vanish, backwards into the second line, then the second into the third. To the enemy, it looks like retreat, a collapse. But it's not. It's a fake withdrawal. They charge, thinking Rome is breaking. And that's when the trap closes. Fresh units, hidden in flanking positions, slam in from both sides. The Romans haven't retreated. They've pulled you in like a predator luring prey. It was psychological judo. You attacked because you thought they were weak, but you never realized they wanted you to. Chapter 2. The Turtle. That 8 arrows alive. The Testudo Formation. You've probably seen it in movies. The Testudo, or tortoise formation. But here's the real reason it was terrifying. Enemy archers would fire wave after wave of arrows. Most armies would scatter, scream, or panic. Not Rome. Instead, every soldier locked shields overhead and on the sides, forming a moving iron box. From a distance, it looked invincible, like the earth itself had grown armor. But the trick wasn't just protection, it was movement under fire. Romans used this shell to advance toward enemy walls in total silence, closing the gap, arrow after arrow bouncing harmlessly off. Then they'd break the formation, instantly, and attack from point-blank range. It wasn't just defense, it was an illusion of invulnerability. Chapter 3. The Decoy Army that wasn't real shadow warfare. Sometimes Rome didn't even show up. They'd spread rumors, false legions marching down river valleys, forging fake tracks, and lighting extra campfires. Entire tribes would panic. They'd flee before the Romans had even crossed the border. And if the enemy ever came looking, they'd find broken sandals, discarded armor, and wax dummies set up in formation at dawn. It was war by phantom, while real Roman legions hit from the side or rear, completely undetected. The trick wasn't just brute force, it was mental warfare, making you believe you were surrounded by a force that wasn't even there. Chapter 4. The Siege that fought underground. Dig, collapse, bury the enemy alive. When Rome laid siege to a city, it didn't just throw rocks, it dug underneath. Roman engineers would tunnel beneath enemy walls, propping up the stone foundations with wooden beams, then light them on fire. The walls didn't fall from outside, they crumbled from below, while defenders stood on top. But that's not all. Romans would often dig multiple tunnels, some as decoys, others to plant booby traps or smoke out defenders with sulfur and pitch. They turned cities into death puzzles, where the enemy never knew which part of the ground would vanish next. And they timed the collapse with terrifying precision. 1 minute you're defending the gate, the next, you're buried beneath it. Chapter 5. The Sudden Wall Trick. Wait, they built… what? Imagine waking up and realizing the Romans built a fortress around your entire army, overnight. That's exactly what happened to the Gauls during the siege of Alesia. Julius Caesar's forces were outnumbered. Inside the city, 80,000 Gallic warriors. Outside the city, another 250,000 coming to help. So what did Rome do? They built 2 walls, one facing in to trap the defenders, one facing out to block reinforcements. In just 3 weeks, Caesar's men built over 20 miles of wall, ditches, towers, and traps. The Gauls were sealed in. Then they were starved out. It wasn't a battle, it was a construction-based ambush. The trick wasn't to fight both enemies, it was to build so fast they never got the chance. Chapter 6. The Hammer and Anvil Slam. Classic Roman domination. Rome's most famous move was also its deadliest. The hammer and anvil. First, they'd form a line, shields locked, moving slow. This was the anvil. The enemy would charge, thinking they could break through, but Roman lines were like cement. They bent, never broke. Then came the hammer, Roman cavalry, or reserve legions slamming into the flanks. You couldn't retreat. You couldn't turn. You were pinned between death and more death. This wasn't about numbers. It was about compression, turning thousands of enemy warriors into a panicking mass, trapped, disoriented, crushed. And Rome repeated this move across continents for centuries. It always worked. Chapter 7. Poison words and paper battles. The strategy. Rome never admitted. Not all Roman tricks were on the battlefield. Some were at the negotiating table. They'd sign alliances with local tribes, offer gifts, pretend to be friendly. Then, right before war broke out, they'd turn the tribes against each other. Divide and conquer wasn't just a motto, it was policy. Rome would send spies to spread rumors. You know that other tribe? They're working with the enemy. You're being betrayed. Act now. And when civil war erupted, Rome would walk in, offer peace, and take everything. The trick wasn't to beat the enemy, it was to make the enemy beat themselves, and then act like you were the hero who stopped it. Chapter 8. The mind game that never ended. Why can't we break them? Rome's real power wasn't swords, it was reputation. Enemies didn't just fight Rome, they feared it. They had nightmares about it. Roman soldiers were trained to fight in silence. No chants, no taunts, just cold, disciplined violence. To barbarian tribes, this was terrifying. No war cries, no emotion, just a machine. And when Rome won, it didn't just take land. It built roads, forums, amphitheaters, bathhouses. It didn't say, "We beat you." It said, "We are your future." That was the final trick. The war never ended. It just became your new normal. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it conquered that fast. So how did Rome stay unbeatable for centuries? Simple. They weren't just warriors. They were architects of war. Every battle was a blueprint. Every enemy, a test. And every victory, built on deception, engineering, and ruthless logic. They used illusions, traps, walls, whispers, and silence. They made you think you were winning until you were surrounded. Rome didn't just conquer the world with muscle, they outsmarted it. And in doing so, they didn't just win wars, they changed how wars were fought forever.